I have had the honor and privilege to introduce Traweek Dickson Sr. On the heels of one of the biggest, if not the biggest, acquisitions in the collision repair world late last year. Joe Hudson being acquired by Boyd Group, and Traweek is the co-founder of Joe Hudson and the former CEO now. A little bit about your history, Traweek, and the history of Joe Hudson, because it's pretty fascinating. I mean, I've been looking down the list here, and it just reads like a novel, like a storybook, like a movie almost. So why don't we start, Traweek, with a little bit about your background and your childhood, and I guess you were raised on a cotton farm. Is this true?
Yeah, yeah. I was raised in central Alabama on a working farm, not just row crop, but my dad had cow-calf operation, had a stockyard, had a dairy, and then a big row crop operation. Yeah, raised on a working farm. That's where I learned how to work.
Wow. And you actually went to college. I know this industry, I think the average shop owner maybe took some graduated high school, maybe trade school. So you went to Auburn, I guess. And what degree did you get?
Got a business degree with a minor in statistics and economics. I didn't come out with the standard body shop education, but I wasn't raised around a body shop. I'm not a working class guy. I got a lot of respect for that, but so I'm a what I would consider an educated businessman.
I would say, I mean, econ statistics. I failed that class at John Carroll. I know that for sure. I can remember that.
Well, I failed English. We all have our strengths.
This is true. This is true.
It's funny. I failed accounting in college the first time I took it, and like accounting is one of my favorite things, and I kick ass in it now. So you know how that is. So don't beat yourself up too badly about that. But I've known Trawick for a fair amount of time, and I think his story for me, just knowing him and hearing it over the years and kind of putting the puzzle pieces together. I think what's interesting is he's had a lot of adversity, and I think body shop owners every day, like we are faced with adversity. And I think that's something, big T, that's what I call Trawick is big T. I think that's something we should really focus on and talk a little bit about a lot of the adversity that you went through and challenges that you got to get from, where you started on the cotton farm. I mean, there was adversities during that time period, even when you were getting ready to go to college, all the way, to when you were in Orange Beach doing development. And then, when you eventually, partnered up with Joe. So would you mind kind of touching on some of those adversities like early on in your life? And, I think those are important things that body shop owners need to hear, because it's so easy to get caught up in the grind. And as a shop owner, and I can tell you this myself, because I feel like, I've got a story of a lot of adversity as well. And I just feel like that helps people when they're in a tough place to see that they're not the only one facing these challenges, and how to, for lack of better words, dig and fight to get out.
Yeah, I'd be glad to talk about some adversity. I don't feel like I've had a life full of it. I've had a great life, and the fact that there was adversity. How many long lives are there that doesn't have some adversity? And so I've had a great life, but my dad, I had a great father, loved my dad dearly, but a good businessman he was not. And so my father inherited a big farm. He went to Alabama. Maybe that was part of the problem. But when he came back, Dad developed a drinking issue, and so it's hard to run a farming operation the size of what he had and run a business. He had a large stockyard, so it was just impossible to do that, juggle all those balls, manage a drinking problem at the same time. So he went broke, lost the farm. All that happened when I was really from the time I remember being alive till about 16. I think is when the foreclosure hammer hit in terms of losing the place. And so I had a, I didn't want that. I think it was a good thing that happened to me because it was offensive. I didn't want to repeat that. And so I may have a lot of problems, but it's not a substance problem. I don't want to, I had a front row seat of that. I don't want to participate in that. So, but hey, that's learning, right? I mean, my dad taught me a lot, and not everything it wasn't all pretty, but he taught me a lot. And so I was well prepared in terms of the get up and go when I got out of Auburn. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I didn't want to go back to where he did.
It's interesting you say that because my father went bankrupt when I was 17, turning 18. It was when I was in high school. And that's when my dad lost his businesses and lost everything. So I feel like I'm cut from that same cloth. Like I was bound and determined not to live in that space and to
Right.
learn, I don't say this to be negative, but to learn from the challenges and mistakes that he made. But also, when you talked about that you've had a great life, I feel like I've had a great life too, but I've had a lot of adversity as well. But I think that's a big part of it is for lack of better words, the lens that you're looking from. You're a very positive person. And, even though you've had some challenges and some ups and downs, just, like you said, any success story is going to have that. I think that's the lens. A lot of people get stuck and mired in, woe is me or many different other lenses in that wheelhouse. And I think that's an important takeaway from the podcast today is having that, you know, yeah, get kicked in the stomach, get down a little bit, but then dig, 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 and get back out, get your smiling face on, and start kicking ass. You know what I mean? And I know that's what you've done. I know that's what I've done. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's how you do it.